Hi. I thought I would zip up to the top of my favorite volcano and have a chat with you guys. Let's go. Hi, this is Quinlan, and one thing I hear from a lot of people, and I've seen posted in a lot of forums online, is how difficult it is to make friends with Japanese people when you're living here in Japan. So I wanted to take a few minutes and explore what some of the main obstacles to having Japanese friends might be and how you can overcome them. Now, a topic like this is sort of by definition going to include generalizations, and so let me include the obvious disclaimer that everybody's different, everybody's an individual, there's exceptions to everything, hashtag not all Japanese people, you know? I just mean I'm going to do my best to talk in general terms, and please take it with a grain of salt. I'm not a psychologist or an anthropologist, I'm just someone who's lived here for 20 years. The first most obvious barrier is simply, obviously, language. And if you just got here and you don't speak Japanese at all, that's going to be a problem. And I really think you need to get on learning Japanese. If you plan on spending a year or 10 or however long, it's worth it to learn the language when you're here. I think that the Japanese language is not as hard as everyone makes it out to be. Of course, sounding native is incredibly difficult. Some people can manage it, I can't. But being understandable, making yourself understood, being conversational to the point of being able to hang out with people comfortably and say things, I don't think that's that difficult. The grammar is actually simpler than a lot of European languages, and I think people just have a mental block and are intimidated by it. So if you just try and learn it with an open mind, I think that you'll get pretty far in Japanese much quicker than you'd think. I've heard a lot of people complain that the Japanese friends that they make just want to use them to learn English or French or whatever language they speak and use them as a conversation practice or as a language learning tool. And, sure, fair enough, but put yourself in their shoes. I mean, if you were studying Japanese and you were living in, somewhere in the States or wherever, and a Japanese person was nearby and you thought, wow, I could be friends with them, you'd want to learn Japanese from them, you'd want to practice. So let's, give them the benefit of the doubt on that. That's not such a crime. If you've read anything about Japanese culture, then you've heard about the famous honne and tatemae. The honne being what you actually think, and the tatemae meaning your, fake face, your front that you're putting out for the world. And of course, this isn't unique to Japan. I mean, I'm from the Midwest, and we all talk about Minnesota nice and stuff like that. It is true that when you first meet someone, though, when you don't know them well, there are really very distinctly different ways of behaving between, say, the West, generally speaking, and Japan. And I think this leads to a lot of people missing out on potential friendships and good things because they have wrong expectations, basically. So just talking really generally, when you first meet people and you're from, say, United States, Canada, the UK, maybe, I don't know. In my experience, you sort of joke, you make banter, you sort of might make some sort of sarcastic comment, or you just want to sort of show yourself as a relaxed, friendly person. Maybe you'll joke or comment about something in the environment, but at any rate, jokes play a big part, or sometimes even, sarcastic or, witty statements. Whereas that will not often go that well when you're first meeting people in Japan who haven't, had a lot of experience with Westerners who be used to that sort of thing. When Japanese people first meet people, a lot of times what they're first initially trying to figure out is how they fit on the normal respect hierarchy. And so age, maybe type of job, things like that, so that they know if they need to use formal language, or rather what level of formality of language they should use with the person, what title they should use for them, things like that. And so Japanese people are much more cautious when they first meet you and when they meet each other, and they'll just be sort of sizing each other up in a way so they know how to give the right amount of respect. And that's an important part of the culture here. And so if you are immediately coming at them with, friendly jokes and stuff, a lot of times it'll either just go over their head or they won't feel quite comfortable with it, generally speaking. So what can you do about this? Well, if you're in Japan, it makes sense to, bend and to the Japanese way, when in Rome, as they say. And so I think it does make sense to just be a little bit, more polite. You can still be friendly and casual. You can try jokes, just don't expect people to get them. Manage your expectations and realize where they're coming from and how, things that they have to take into consideration when they're thinking about how to give you the right amount of respect. Another point about managing expectations is about the level and depth of interaction that you do with people early on in a friendship. In the West, at least where I'm from, in the Midwest, we like to talk about real serious issues. We talk about politics, about sort of existential feelings about our life and where we would like to go with it, how we feel about death or, philosophy, things like that. I mean, everybody's different, but I think it's fairly common for people where I'm from to rather early on in a friendship to sort of as a show or as a sort of sign that you're, good friends or you're close friends, that you're interested in each other, that you talk about pretty things that are near and dear to you, that there's a level of intimacy. Whereas Japanese people, in general, tend to be a lot slower with these sort of intimate discussions. And I have witnessed before myself problems where an American person from the West also was trying to get close too soon, too fast to a Japanese person. And they were really just sort of pushing, trying to show how friendly they were, how accepting, how fun, and really opening up and trying to develop a close friendship with the Japanese person. And the Japanese person, for their part, felt like smothered and was like, whoa, too soon, too much. This is too much. Leave me alone. Don't force me to be your best friend. And I think that's probably not a unique situation. I mean, on the one hand, I think it is less common for Japanese people to discuss things like religion, politics, maybe things, real serious, existential sort of issues with each other until they've known each other for a really long time. I mean, people tend to just talk about more casual things more here, and there's less a culture of that like intense sharing that we like to do where I'm from. And so I think for that, a really good thing to do is just, modify your expectations and don't think that you're not being a friend or you're not on your way to being a friend just because you haven't had like a real heart-to-heart with someone. Be aware that, people open up at different speeds and to just not push it, but just to enjoy getting to know people at their pace, especially when you're in their culture, in their time, and maybe even in their language. There are lots of little things that might put you off at first, but that you just got to get used to. For example, in Japan, it's really rare to invite someone to your house. And so if you might feel like you're always kept at arm's length because you've never been to any of your friends' apartments or houses, you don't need to feel that way. They hardly ever invite each other over too. I mean, everybody's different. Certain people do, sure. But generally speaking, it's quite rare. And it's kind of a sort of a big deal and a lot of stress to have someone over to your actual house, especially people who are married or live with their parents. And so it's really common for people to have been friends for years and never have been to each other's houses. They always meet out and do things out. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's some lack of intimacy or anything like that. One thing that a lot of people, at least where I'm from in the Midwest, love to do, and I think it's pretty common everywhere, is just to tell personal anecdotes. And so every time you get a chance, something reminds you of something, you try and tell like some funny little story from your past or some joke about something your cousin or your grandfather did or something. These little personal stories are not as common to be told by Japanese people. And in fact, you, if you're not careful, around Japanese people, you'll just talk, and they won't be doing much of the talking, and you might interrupt or jump in the middle of the conversation without realizing you're cutting people off and just blah, 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 blah. I mean, at least I have been guilty of that in the past, certainly, though I think I'm better about it now, to some degree. People love to share here. And so if you're ever going out hiking with people or taking a little trip with people or even going to the park or picnic, always bring food to share. And as is maybe infamous, Japan is full of things individually wrapped, little snacks and treats. And so, yeah, bring some of those along, share them with other people. And remember, the gift-giving thing is a big deal. If you do someone a favor, they'll probably give you a gift, a little gift. And you don't have to give people gifts back when they give you gifts, though sometimes Japanese people will do that. If you ask a favor from someone, that can be a way to get closer to them. I borrowed a tool from my next-door neighbor, and when I gave it back to him, I also gave him a beer as a little thank you for lending me his, I forget what it was. It was maybe a saw or a little ladder or something like that. But I gave him a beer when I returned it to him a couple hours later. And then he was curious because he hadn't had an IPA before, and I was giving him an IPA. And so we talked a little bit about it. And I think little things like that over time stack up, and you get closer to people. People often complain about the fact that you'll never be seen as Japanese. And yeah, that's true. You'll probably never be viewed as Japanese unless the culture really radically changes. But, you know, that's okay. It doesn't mean you can't have close friends with Japanese people. Just because they'll always see you as a foreigner doesn't mean you won't be able to have a close, meaningful, good relationship with them. And so I don't think it's really such a terrible thing that you'll never be viewed as a Japanese person. I mean, there's a lot of good things. I mean, you get a pass because inevitably, my mom, actually, my mother, when she visits, she says she often feels like a bull in a china shop because she's just stomping over all the rules. And it's true, she is. But the nice thing about not being Japanese is that she's forgiven for it and not judged harshly. It's a good thing that people understand that there's no way you're gonna know all the different things you're supposed to say in different situations and all the ways you're supposed to behave. And so they don't expect you to. And it's still a good idea to try your best. I mean, you don't want to just stomp all over the culture and just be like, they don't expect anything from me. I'll just behave like an American. I mean, that's the other extreme. You don't want to do that necessarily. But if you're doing your best, people appreciate it. And that'll, make you seem like a good, responsible person. And you're more likely to have a better time making friends here. Let me confess that I had the idea for making this video while I was on my way hiking up the mountain today. I developed 5 ideas in my head for bullet points, sort of 5 things that keep you from having good friends in Japan, and I was all set to make a rather simplistic, here's a problem, here's a solution, here's a problem, here's a solution. But the more I thought about it, I realized that the issue is more complicated than that, and there aren't really easy solutions for a lot of it. Some of the things are just about being more flexible and being more understanding about other people's way of thinking and being and their culture, basically, at risk of sounding really, generic. And so it's not easy to deal with another culture, especially one as different as Japan, and there aren't any easy, quick solutions. But I hope that some of the ramblings, some of the musings that I've done here today are helpful, and or at least interesting, if not helpful. I would love to hear your experience about making friends with people in Japan, or struggles you've had in other countries, maybe, or with other people whose first language isn't the same as yours. I'm interested to hear your experience. Please let me know what you think. Not showing much drone footage today, but if you do like seeing the mountains from the skies, or like what I'm doing and really want to support my activities here on YouTube and sharing this with you, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. There's a link both in the description and on the YouTube page. And if you support me on Patreon, you get access to more drone videos, a little more content, and I really appreciate it. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, I'm Quinlan on Instagram, and I am GoNorthJ on Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the trails.